Welcome to Connected by Health. I'm Dr. Krishna Vedala. This is where medicine meets leadership, innovation, and humanity with one goal: to add value and help change healthcare for the better. If you believe health is about more than a diagnosis, you're in the right place. At some point in life, many of us quietly ask ourselves, is this all there is? Is there anything else more to life? How do I find myself again? Today's guest has made it her mission to sit with people in that exact moment and to help them find a way forward. Join me today in welcoming the wonderful Dr. Stephanie Byerly from UnNumb Coaching Collective. Whether someone is navigating burnout, loss, or simply just a loss of direction, Dr. Byerly will help uncover clarity, purpose, and a renewed sense of meaning. Her work reminds us that purpose isn't something you just stumble upon. It's something that you can build and something that you can rebuild. And with that, Dr. Byerly, thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be a guest. So I am an anesthesiologist, and I was in academic medicine for 25 years and sort of did it all. Professor, wrote the papers, did all the things. And also at the last several years during academics, became a coach and ventured into many different types of coaching, life coaching, leadership coaching, women-centered coaching, and trauma-informed coaching. So I am a coach kind of combining all those things. I'm an ICF-certified coach and also a keynote speaker, and have my own organization, as you named, really the UnNumb method. My company is UnNumb, and my mission in life is to help people become unnumb.
Awesome. What made you, you've had a distinguished career in anesthesia, like you said, academia, but what made you really transition away from that?
So I'm still practicing and love what I do. And I really wanted to focus on helping people every day. So I love anesthesia, and I only get to see a patient one time. So it isn't that we have a long-term relationship. It's that I help them one time during a very, very scary, critical time in their life. But I knew that I could help in another way where it would help people every day during their lives, every conversation. And I know that probably sounds very like, oh my gosh, who does she think she is? But when we talk about coaching, really understanding that coaching is helping individuals become the best version of themselves. And when you embrace really what coaching is, it does change every conversation, every situation, everything in your life. And when I learned about coaching, I was like, gosh, I really have to the people that in my network, the people I care for, myself at first, understanding what a difference it could make in their life.
You kind of referred to this earlier today about numbness, and sometimes how we tend to use numbness as a survival strategy. Why do you think we tend to resort to numbness?
I think there's several reasons. And if we go back to what happens when you have trauma, and it doesn't matter, we talk about big T, little t trauma. You and I could experience the same exact trauma, and your nervous system would process it differently than mine. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And if we understand that a lot of our trauma responses are set in place by the time we're 7 years old, based on what's happening to us and how our nervous system is perceiving safety for us, we get into, our body decides fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. When you go through these traumatic experiences, and especially compounded, a lot of us have experiences that continue. Trauma oftentimes just isn't just one event. What happens is your body goes into this protective mode, and it becomes too painful for your body to allow you to experience all of the emotions that you experienced during the trauma. So it pretty much, it forces you to almost have armor for protection. And there's another area which I specialize in for women that talks about numbness and really the pain of understanding how we've really shrunk ourselves in our lifetime, or we've not gone for things because we're too afraid of the criticism and all the things about being a woman. That's a whole nother subject. But it's easier to just become numb or barely alive, where you are going through the motion. So physically you're there, but mentally your brain is in a completely other place. And the issue is that you don't feel things, but you may be showing up in a different way. So although I walked around numb most of my life, I became very anxious, especially when I was going through a very ugly divorce and things. And I didn't understand that I was anxious. People around me knew I was anxious. I felt numb. I didn't feel like I wasn't feeling anything. And it's that whole, when you walk around numb, you just think, why can't I enjoy life like everybody else? Why am I the one person who doesn't even almost sadness sometimes? It's like you're just a hollowed out shell.
I completely agree with where you're coming from. I've had my fair share of struggles. First, trying to get into medical school, then getting into medical school and struggling in medical school, and then getting into residency, and then being an internal medicine resident in rural Arkansas during the COVID pandemic with limited resources. I've had a fantastic time in residency. I've learned a lot, but but at the end of the day, when I go back and think about it, just the trauma from taking care of patients that in some cases didn't make it, having to pronounce patients and letting their family know on Christmas morning they're gone. These were all things that I do think about at certain times. And do you feel this is something that the aspect of numbness, it's not just something that is within medicine, but really even outside of healthcare? There's a lot of people that, whether if it's in business or energy or even in politics, do you think this is something that applies to from a lot of different sectors?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And there's a whole subset of women, we call them self-actualizing women, high achieving women who've conquered and achieved right in a certain identity, this achiever identity that we're outgrowing. And so we're getting to the point where we're like, this can't all be it. This just cannot be it. Like there has to be more. I did everything I was supposed
Yeah.
to get out of being in roles that were prescribed to women.
Hmm.
And now I don't even know what's next for me because you become so disconnected from yourself. And
Yeah.
I think a big part of it for all of us that feel this way is because we're so in this, I've got to achieve, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And that's not really what helps us feel worthy.
Yeah.
And we think it's what helps us feel worthy, right? I'm going to feel good about myself when I accomplish this or get this degree or this or that. And then you get there and you're like, okay, what's next? So you keep moving the goalpost
Hmm.
because you think that, okay, if I just do this, I'll feel better, right?
Yeah.
I'll feel good about myself. And so I think it's really everybody now in so many ways. And especially when we think about what we see on social media and what we see in the news, we think these things we see are what we're supposed to aspire to. And then we're finally going to feel good about ourselves. We're going to be happy. And that's just not the way that it works.
Yeah. No, definitely. And that's why when I came across your profile and what you're trying to do, I kind of felt like this is what you're trying to do is basically what we're trying to do on this podcast, which is really trying to show health is not just about, a clinic and a hospital. There's so much to it. And that's really why I appreciate what you're trying to do, because this is something that affects everyone. It's not just people that are in healthcare. It's not just people that are in leadership. It could be anyone. It could be anyone at any point in their life, because you're right. We really are affected by so many external factors, whether it be social media, whether it be the world almost falling apart on a daily basis. How do we cope with all of this? How do we also at the same time simultaneously try to live our lives while at the same time trying to put together an identity for ourselves? And at times, letting that process of putting together an identity burn us out, and then go back to what you said, numbness. We tend to just forget about everything else and then just utilize numbness as a way to really cope with all of this. And that's why I really appreciate what you're doing, Dr. Byerly. Well, thank you so much for all that you're doing. But, you talked about this earlier, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about what you're trying to do with the UnNumb Coaching Collective and then the UnNumb method.
What I've really learned over this last 5 years on my coaching journey since I started into coaching is really what women need to become unnumb, really. And regular coaching, meaning grow coaching, where you set a goal and how do I get there? What's in the way? That's all great. But it's very difficult for women to really transform with that kind of model because women have not been sort of socialized to understand their full potential. So women really only know 50% of their potential. And I'm going to say that specifically for marginalized identities, non-white women with disabilities, all the things, it's
Mhm.
even much more amplified. And so they have to understand that transformation means identity change, literally at the level of identity. So you can't just say affirmations and mindset things and become a different person. It has to be looking at what has been internalized in your brain, these we call inner barriers. And this comes from family of origin, comes epigenetics, social media, all the things that we see, cultural, basically inheritance. He's starting to look at what's inside there that's really running the show, because our subconscious is what is running the show for all of us. And when we start to understand how we have operationalized all of these inner barriers and things that are running in the background, then we start to understand, you know what? I'm not stuck in this old story that has sort of been programmed into my brain of who I'm supposed to be and how I should act and how I should look and all of the things and what I should do with my life. It's really at the point of now I get to write my new story. Now I get to break through the old story and understand what's holding me back. And for women, true transformation comes when they actually start having new behaviors. So we have to do things that push us out of our comfort zone, understanding that visibility for women feels like unsafety, feels like it's fear. And so when we start to actually understand what's holding us back and keeping us in a cage,
Mhm.
behaviors, habits, new things that actually become our new identity. And then we become unleashed,
Yeah.
unnumb, unstoppable, right? And so it's this whole method of life coaching and a little bit of understanding your trauma and trauma responses, because women live in trauma responses.
Mhm.
We hate that word trauma, but if we can start to understand that we've all had trauma and it's literally ruling our lives, when we start to understand, oh my gosh, I can get control of all this very quickly and start to really plan my life intentionally,
Mhm.
everything shifts. And so within a couple of coaching sessions, it's like this weight gets lifted off your shoulders, not in a way of like, oh, I have no responsibility for this, but in the way of understanding, oh my gosh, there's been this whole operating system in my brain. Like when you turn your computer on, your operating system that just takes over every day. And I can change this. And it is remarkable.
Mhm. No, this sounds amazing just to hear you talking about this. One of the things that I'll have to say is over the last decade, we've seen so much across the world, whether if that is because of just the advent of social media, everything now is almost not just hyper partisan, but also what I like calling we become hyper aware of just the world
Yeah.
because every now and then every second we get a notification on our smartphone, whether if that is CNN brings you this immediate emergency news, or if we just hear about things through social media such as Twitter or Facebook. And I do think that it increases anxiety to a certain degree. I've had so many of my colleagues, whether if they're male or if they're female, whether if they're a white or a minority ethnic origin, or even in the last couple of weeks, some of my colleagues that are living in the Middle East,
Yeah.
just having to deal with the inability to control things that are out of their hands, whether that be war or even simple as just trying to coexist in a world where they are having to worry about their own future and their own safety. This, what you're trying to do in trying to help promote and make people aware of numbness and then also at the same time offering a service. Once again, I can't thank you enough for this. Thank you so much. Another amazing thing that you're doing, which is you're having your TEDx talk, and we're very, very excited. What can we expect from the TEDx talk?
I'm so excited about this TEDx talk. There's going to be close to 50 of us speaking all on different aspects of trauma and changing culture and changing, legislation and things around trauma. So that it's going to be unbelievable. I'm going to be talking about my journey of my trauma, but in a way of looking at it as I didn't know I was numb my entire life until a epiphany during something called a psychodrama. And this was where people come together who have had significant trauma with a facilitator in a group where you trust each other. It's the same group of people. We would go together every 6 weeks to meet and relive our traumas on a stage. So we would set up a stage and we would ask people in the group to play different parts in the trauma. And so basically you're rewriting it as an adult and you're trying to alter your neural pathways about the trauma. And the facilitator asked me why I became an anesthesiologist, and I kept giving her the usual answers. And, we had been going for 16 hours that day. And she stood over me and she said in a very forceful way, I would say, "Why did you really become an anesthesiologist?" And finally I said to her, "You know what? I guess I don't know. Can you please just tell me?" And she said, "You became an anesthesiologist because you've walked around numb your entire life. And what do you do every day? You put people to sleep and you make them numb so they can't feel when they're having the most horrific things done to their body." And Krishna, it was an incredible light bulb moment for me, and I saw my whole life flash before my eyes, and I saw myself numb
Mhm.
in situations. Like I was just reliving and just seeing myself where my body was there, but I was not there. And it
Mhm.
was the most pivotal point in changing my life going forward. And I want to talk about, my TED Talk talking about how when I got that epiphany after conquering and achieving and getting everything I thought was going to have my life look different, like not my childhood. I was outrunning my child.
Mhm.
And what I learned was it always comes out sideways if you don't deal with your trauma. And my journey going forward and really understanding what trauma is and why so many people who've had trauma go into healthcare,
Mhm.
and how we start really embodying the safety and becoming unnumb. And that when you can feel again and experience life again, how different it is and how different it would be for our global community if people understood their ACEs score, so their adverse childhood experience survey score, and what that does to you as a person and then all the people around you. It's like a ripple effect, right? Like when we say trauma, trauma begets trauma. And we don't use the word triggered, use the word activation, because really your nervous system gets activated, right? That's what happens. It's activation.
Mhm.
But when you're around people who are healing people heal people. And so it's this shift. And how if we all could begin to understand this and look at people from, wow, what must have happened to you instead of what is wrong with you? And just that shift and really understanding we've all had trauma. And you mentioned before, like social media, I think people don't understand that when we look at the news or we look at social media, that's vicarious trauma.
Mhm.
It's not happening to us, right? But we're watching it. And our brain processes that as if it's happening to us. It does
Mhm.
not understand that it isn't happening to us. And so our body is internalizing all this as if all of this is happening to us. And so when we're doom scrolling on social media, again, our brain is processing is that all of this is happening to us. Awesome.
All right. Well, we're looking eagerly forward, and I think it's going to be an amazing session. And I don't want any of our listeners to miss this. Dr. Stephanie Byerly, TEDx Talk, don't miss it. We'll be posting information about how you guys can watch it live, and also later on your respective video websites. Dr. Byerly, thank you so much for being here. But before you leave, do you have any words of wisdoms for our listeners, specifically those that are looking into going into healthcare or those that are looking into helping people recover from numbness?
Yes, absolutely. It has to start with you as the person who's doing that. So it's an inside out job, as we say. And radical self compassion, the kind that we give to everyone else and not ourselves, is really, it has to start with you and understanding that you have to heal first or begin the healing process to actually understand, why you're in these professions or why you're trying to help people. Because when we look back and really think about why we went into medicine,
Hmm.
right? It's really having this radical self-compassion for yourself and saying, okay, why do I want to help other people? What's the motivation? Because oftentimes we're not really sure why we're doing it. And we think we're going to feel better about ourselves, we're helping other people. But if we don't start with ourselves, it isn't going to bring you the validation that you think it is.
Awesome. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming by, and we'd love to have you back on the show to talk about a lot of different things we touched today.
Thank you so much.
If you found this conversation valuable, share it with someone who could use it. And if you're on Apple, we'd love to hear your favorite takeaway and a review. See you next week.